conversation today for this plenary session specifically. And without further ado, because I have just 1 hour for 2 keynote speeches or presentations, and then a panel conversation. And I want to promise that I will deliver 10 a.m. If my panelists and keynote speakers comply. But we are agile, and so allow me invite our first keynote speaker, Professor Kala, who is going to speak to us. Now, there's one thing I've come to appreciate, so I won't read their bio. They all have very detailed LinkedIn profiles, so the challenge I have for you is go look them up on LinkedIn and get to know who they are. So Professor Kala, without wasting time, please come to the podium and speak to us, and we'll invite Deepa right after. Can we please welcome Professor Kala as he comes to speak to us? Over to you, Professor.
Good afternoon. Sorry, my brain is not working. Good morning, everyone. And it's really a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm going to try and be a little bit quick. And I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of how I see things evolving in the digital space. It's a very light type of presentation, but it's based on some observations that I've seen. And I think, particularly for utilities in Africa and in South Asia, I think there's a lot of relevance in what we're seeing emerging. And I've already had discussions with some of the utilities from Africa about some of this. So when we talk about using digital, it's really to help the water sector get smarter. We have a lot of global change pressures that we're experiencing. And because of those global change pressures like climate change, but also rapid urbanization, we're struggling to manage our resources effectively using the current infrastructure. So we're starting to design our systems more smartly. They're becoming more adaptive to some of the uncertainties associated with global change. We're starting to look at more distributed systems because it allows us to support things like the circular economy approaches. So we're becoming much smarter by design. And the reason we're sort of designing systems more smartly is also because we have to use our resources more effectively. We're starting to rethink the way we use water, the way we reuse water, and even the way we use energy as well. We're trying to minimize our energy costs. And we're trying to also recover value from our waste streams. So we're getting smarter in the way in which we use resources. And all of this is really being supported by digital innovation. Digital innovation is really there as an enabler. It's not the end. It just facilitates us to do some of these clever things. Now, utilities worldwide are on this digital transformation journey, and Africa is no exception. And we've seen a growing adoption of digital tools to enhance the operational efficiencies. Things like SCADA for real-time monitoring, GIS is widely used, and Frank, who will be on the panel, is an expert in that. For asset management, we see the deployment of smart meters that allow us to manage our water losses more effectively and also improve revenue collection. And things like mobile payment systems, which are quite innovative here in Africa particularly, that really opens up service provision in a very effective way for people. So these advancements have really been making a significant impact here in Africa, but there are also challenges. And I don't really have time to go through some of those challenges, but I'm sure the panel will discuss that. Now, when you look at digital, you're really talking about an ecosystem. And that ecosystem starts with sensors that capture the data. And there's a lot of innovation in this space. Sensors are becoming smaller, they're becoming cheaper, and they can measure more things. And we're seeing a lot of water tech startups who are focusing on the development of sensors. And in Asia and Africa, you're seeing a lot of very frugal innovation, right? Cost-effective type of innovations. And you see people developing a battery of multi-parameter sensors that are cloud-enabled, and they can measure many, many different parameters, both in terms of water and wastewater. We're also seeing a variety of sort of in-pipe probes, sort of drones that get released into the water and sewage pipes. And they're able to map the networks, they're able to check the integrity of the pipes and the condition of the pipes, and they're able to detect leaks and search for blockages. So this is a big area that you're seeing a lot of companies now developing these in-probe type of robotic-based sensors. So we're generating a lot more data now and a lot more variable type of data, right? The volume is increasing because the velocity at which we're measuring things is faster, and we're measuring a lot more things. And so we see quite a lot of evolution in terms of the way we process that data, both in terms of data processing, the modeling, and the visualization. And we're moving away from mechanistic models. My training was very much in sort of mechanistic models, which are based on the law of physics. But we're shifting from that to be looking more at data mining models, models that depend on a lot of data and really look for patterns. And in this respect, you see the application of AI, things like neural networks for processing pressure and flow sensor signals, and trying to sort of proactively detect where a pipe might burst, where a leak might occur in advance of it happening. But a big area, I'm sure you all know, is the area of sort of deep learning, generative AI, and this will be very important to our sector, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we generate all this data, we process this data, and now we're seeing the development or the emergence of smart devices, pumps and valves that sort of have onboard computers on them. And they can receive the data from these models, and they can start making decisions. And they can self-regulate, right? They have sort of brains built into the devices themselves. And what all of this seems to be moving us to, it's not working. Okay, so what this seems to be moving us to is really what we would call silent running systems. So in the future, you know, these systems will self-manage and self-regulate themselves. So you see, as the cost of connectivity goes down very fast, water utilities have the opportunity to really reanimate their assets. They can bring them back to life and watch them like children, you know, as they perform, as they age, and as they deteriorate. So we have this opportunity to start to reanimate both our above-ground infrastructure, but also our underground infrastructure. For me, the most exciting development that I've seen in the last sort of 8 months is around generative AI, right? And I really think it's opening up a new dawn within our sector, particularly these large language models. You know, these systems are unleashing the potential of our untapped data by making complex analysis quite simple and accessible to everyone. Gone are the days when you will need a programmer to extract insights and data. Today, human language is the programming language, and all of us are empowered to be data analysts. I mean, really anybody can do it. So these generative AIs, they seamlessly integrate data from different formats. So our monitoring data of pipe flows and pressures to the physical data in our asset management systems, which we call structured data. You know, our customer complaints in our CRM systems, which could be sort of verbal or voice, which is sort of more unstructured data. And then we have the hidden tacit knowledge of our experts and operators and repair teams. So these generative AIs can take the data in different formats, and you can just place them inside the generative AI, and then you can start asking questions, and it allows you to start to interrogate this huge amount of data in a very simple way. Now, when I think of the data that a utility has, I think about it like a library. Right? And for me, a library is a gold mine. I'm an ex-academic. I love going to libraries and reading books. Many utilities, particularly in Asia and Africa, They only read a few books in the library, and the rest of the books are forgotten. You see, our sector collects a lot of data, but we rarely use most of that data, and we rarely connect the dots with that data. And a lot of this has to do with the sheer volume and complexity of the data, right? It overwhelms us. You see, we possess historical registries, handwritten logs, contractors' records dating back decades, documents which detail which pipes were laid when, by whom, and which pipes failed. So we have all this data, but we never really process it. So the problem is not the lack of data, it's the lack of using it. So what if we could transform that chaos into clarity? So let's zoom in onto the 15%. On average, utilities use about 15% of the data that they collect. And this is really the structured data, the low-hanging fruits of our digital resources. This is easy and clean to analyze. This might be real-time flow measurements captured by smart meters. It may be related to pump performance, customer billing data. And these data sets fuel our operational dashboards that you see a lot of utilities having, alerting them to immediate issues, usually when something's happened, right? So it's after the event, and then they react. So most of this data, this 15%, is used for reactive purposes. It tells us what's happened. You know, like a pipe has failed, there's been a change in flow, some pressure variation in the network, and then we respond. But we need to move away from reactive to becoming more proactive. We have to think about predictive management. So if we look at, if we look at the 85% of the unused data, this is the graveyard of missing opportunities. This isn't data that's useless. It's untapped, and its intelligence is waiting to be discovered. Now, it includes some structured data, maybe something related to flows from a reservoir or something, but it consists of a lot of unstructured data, like handwritten maintenance logs, contractor records that could expose poor patterns of workmanship or substandard materials that we use, customer complaints about smell or water quality, which has happened through, say, WhatsApp, emails from engineers flagging recurring issues. Consider this maintenance log might reveal, for example, that a specific pipe segment consistently fails every time there's a heavy rain. Losing this tacit knowledge is like losing a map in uncharted waters. Now imagine the power of preserving and harnessing this knowledge in our decision making. Because in the digital age, tacit knowledge is not just important, it's indispensable. And with these generative AIs, you can upload voice recordings when you're interviewing your staff, videos of the staff talking about some of the problems, and their handwritten notes. They can just be uploaded, and then you can start interrogating them. So this generative AI that I'm talking about, these large language models, right? You can feed them with your traditional structured data. But now you can just go to your offices, take all the PDFs, take all of the handwritten records that you have. And you know, I come from Asia, and we love writing in books when the pipe was laid, and when we have masses of these volumes of encyclopedias of the history of the network. Those can now just be placed inside the large language model without much work. And then from that, the users, you, can just ask simple questions. You don't have to know anything about programming. You just put it in there, so it's got this domain of information that it's searching, so it won't hallucinate. And then you say, can you analyze this historical data and provide me a summary of the pipe materials with the most frequent breaks, including some trends. And so this machine will then start analyzing this information, looking for patterns, looking for trends, and then start sharing with you correlations, right? And it starts to share with you an understanding. I've put into ChatGPT, for example, a 200-page document, and have been able to generate a one-page executive summary that was fairly accurate within seconds. Now, we in the Global South have huge amounts of data sitting in our storage, in our cellars. We need to open them up and start feeding them into this without doing much work, and then interrogating it, because it allows us to make effective decisions. And of course, if we can take some of that tacit information, if we speak to senior decision makers when they leave, if we interview them, if we try and capture some of their knowledge and understanding of the system, the pipe fitters, the people who replace valves, understand, you know, their sort of deep knowledge of the system, then we can start to ask questions which are really related to their experience. You know, which water meters were preferred by the operators based on their feedback and experience? And let's try and correlate that with the performance of these meters. So again, we're doing a correlation. This is the power of these generative AIs. Now, my background was in water distribution, and I did a lot of work on optimization and asset management, and we would use a lot of structured data, pressures, flows, you know, the things about the age, the material of the pipe, and we would try to estimate how the pipes were aging. And we would use hydraulic models to tell us which pipes were the most significant, which pipes were carrying most of the flow. Now we're able to use a lot of this unstructured data, verbal documents, or sorry, text-based documents that people are submitting, phone calls, conversations that have been recorded. We can also use a lot of external data. When you're looking at pipe condition, the soil, the way it shrinks, the way it expands, how does that affect the integrity of the pipe? The traffic loading of the pipe, how does that affect the integrity of the pipe? And then if we combine that with tacit information from our operators who really know how the system works, we can then start to really get fairly accurate estimates of pipe condition. And this is what we would call a criticality analysis. It would tell us which pipes are most vulnerable and which pipes carry the majority of the flow, which makes them very significant for the performance of the system. And then, again, through the generative AI, it can start optimizing and telling us which pipes should we immediately deal with because they're in a very bad situation, which pipes need long-term operation and maintenance. So I really say to you, right, this thing is easy. And I would really encourage you utilities to get some of your young people and encourage them to start thinking about how they can exploit the potential of these products. Because anybody can do it. I mean, I'm using it, and I'm quite an old guy, and I'm using it quite well, and I was a skeptic 4 months ago. I really did. And then I started using it, and I've seen the power of it. And everywhere I go, I try and encourage people to do it. And in IWA, we are now setting up a special unit just to deal with this, so we can process our information. Because we have hundreds and hundreds of journal papers. And we want to extract and curate that information in a very creative way. And we're using generative AI for that. I'll just finish my last slide, just to say that within IWA, we have a digital water program. I think Frank, who's on the panel, is one of the members of that digital water program. It's one of the most successful programs within IWA. It was established in 2019, and we produce a lot of good knowledge products, which are free for everyone, on how we can use digital tools to sort of empower us and evolve. The last slide I always use in my presentation is just to say that we can't stay in the business as usual lane, right? Global change means that we can't continue to manage water in the way we're managing. Our systems were built with 19th century thinking in mind. They were not designed, I mean, they were designed when we thought that, you know, water was abundant, populations were small, the environment was benign. And that's how we designed our systems. And most countries in the global north, this is what they have. Most utilities are in the middle lane. They're trying to repurpose their existing infrastructure, tinkering, because they have all this legacy infrastructure. But in the global south, we have this rare opportunity to rethink the way we do water, the way we use water, the way we reuse water. We're on the cusp of large investments, and this is where digital will help us. It will empower us to do those clever things. So think of it as an enabler. It enables us to become more sustainable in the way in which we manage our water services. Thank you.
I know for topics like this, it's injustice to the keynote speakers to put them 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but it is what it is. Time is not as widespread, so allow me to invite Deepa, who is the co-founder and partner of Athena Infonomics, to give her presentation. So please welcome Deepa.
Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you all in the Congress today. I've already been given a time call, and I haven't even started. So I'm probably going to think about the pieces I really want to focus on. And I want to pick off, Kala, that was a phenomenal presentation. And I want to pick off where, Kala, you left off, which is we just can't do business as usual because the world's changed. The world's changed more in the last 4 years because of the unprecedented innovations in AI and quantum computing and nanotechnology and biosynthesis. It's a different world today. So we literally cannot operate by the same rules that we did even just 5 years ago. That, therefore, is the focus of really what I want to talk about in my keynote today, which is what does that mean for the water sector, right? What does that mean for water utilities? The world has changed, but what does that mean for water utilities and the path that we're going to take? And what does it mean to take a lot of what, Kala, you described in your vision of being data and AI ready, a reality for water utilities in Africa, but also water utilities around the world? I want to lead with this framing because I'm almost going to argue that you don't need to have sophisticated software to begin with. I'm almost going to say that digitalization is a necessary but not sufficient condition. To get a utility to do its job well, we need it, but you can start with wherever you are, whatever level of maturity you have. If you have 6 data sets, most of it coming out of Excel sheets, it's okay, start. And start by building a culture of data use. And I almost sort of want to argue that when you can start thinking about what data means, and when you build a culture of data use and management, you are more likely to start thinking about the kinds of softwares you want to invest in, and how that software is going to help you. You're going to then start thinking about how you can use that better, and you're going to start making better decisions in the first place, and you will well be on the path to starting to predict and think about problems and solving for problems before they happen. I want to talk a little bit in my keynote today. We all know that this is great, this is aspirational, we want it, but how do we do it, right? How can we make it happen? What is a practical way to, so let's talk about the how a little bit, yeah? I want to start with this really simple 6-week engagement we had with about 8 utilities in Kenya over November and December, and with a very forward-looking, very progressive water regulator. I'm sure some of you from the water regulator or the utilities that we worked with are here in the room today. And we started by, okay, let's really learn how we can come together and work together and think about how we can operationalize this vision of becoming data ready. And we started with the premise that, I'm sorry, that what do you want to do this for, right? And the regulator had 2 simple goals. The regulator wanted to know, okay, what is the quality of data I'm getting, right? Is this data comparable? Can I make sense of it? And the utilities obviously were much more interested in the business intelligence aspect of it and the trends. And we said, okay, let's start there, and let's start with what you have. I want to just emphasize that this was, for me, the reason I wanted to showcase this in my keynote today is how much you can do in very little time. We just did this in 6 weeks. We had 65 unique data sets. It's a lot of data. It's not a data problem. But the challenge was that a lot of this data was fragmented. It was sitting in a lot of different silos. The utility themselves did not really have a good sense of all of the different places that their data was sitting on. So this was really an exercise of starting to integrate data that was sitting in different fragmented silos and bringing it together and creating a unified database. That was step 1. Step 2 was pretty simple. Again, my clicker is not. Is how do you then start just looking at what you have already, and how do you start making sense of the data? We built a dashboard. We could dashboard all of this. We could analyze all of that 65 data sets. We could bring it into a common place, and we could start saying, okay, what are we seeing? For the regulator, we could start showing some incredible trends and patterns in terms of where were gaps. We could tell, for some utilities, even basic data on, for example, active and dormant customers was missing, right? Like, let's talk about that. Why is this data missing, and how can we make that data, how can we make sure that that data exists, and what are we missing in that process? We could talk about aspects of standards. We could talk about how data was being generated and transformed. We could say, hey, are we actually all looking at the same set of definitions when we're transforming this data, right? For example, even something as basic as how we think about non-revenue water could be differently understood and transformed across utilities. So it just really was a very simple, a very basic, a practical exercise of going bottom up, looking at what already existed, making sense of that, creating a sensible database architecture so that they could continue to work off it and build off of that, and then generate insights. We also had a lot of cool insights. I'll share just some of them today in the interest of time, but then we're going to be sharing a lot more about this later today at 1:30 in the afternoon in the session. But we could start showing them when, for example, they were losing a lot of money, like they were actually billing lesser and they were producing much more in August than in May. And we were like, oh, let's talk about that. Like, why is that big dip in how much you're billing, and this is just within a single year? We could start zeroing in on customers and saying, oh, wait, you have the biggest defaults in customers that fall under a particular volumetric category. And we could also start saying, you know, a lot of your unaccounted for water isn't just because of leakage. There's so much going on there that you're not looking at. And this is just data that existed, that we mined, that we could put in a database in 6 weeks. And all it took was a set of committed public utilities that said, yes, I want to be data ready, and I'm happy to start looking at what I have and building from there. We built a simple AI chatbot. We have open source plugins to do it now, so Chalakala, a lot of your vision. We can start simple and build up from there. And this allowed the utilities to start querying the data through just language prompts, right? So you don't even have to be a data scientist anymore or look at bar graphs and pie charts. You can just ask a question, and now you can ask it in your own language, not just in English. So what does all of this mean? So this, for me, this 6-week engagement was a way of saying, we can do a lot. We can do a lot with very little, and we don't need you to have the most sophisticated ERPs and softwares and very sophisticated digital systems, let us start with where you are. And it's never, you don't have to be sophisticated or have the most complex software systems to be data ready. It's a culture and a mindset of how you think and operate and run a utility. And we started saying, how can we do this? And how can we make this experience, this value, this service that we made available in 6 weeks for 8 utilities in Kenya, available to all utilities, any utility that's interested in Africa at scale. And that's how the vision for the Africa Utility Data Collaborative was born. This is a platform that we're really excited to launch in collaboration with AfWASA. Mahmood, who's here, and several of the data specialist group members have played a very big role in shaping the vision for this platform and the data collaborative. Now, what is a data collaborative? You start by saying there's power in numbers, right? So let's take all of the amazing things Kala shared about the possibilities of how you can unlock technology and AI and how you can make sense of your data. But how can we take this to utilities and make sure it makes sense for you wherever you're at, and do it cost effectively? Do it in a way where it's affordable and you can, where you're not breaking your back to be able to access data scientists from around the world. That's the vision for the Africa Utility Data Collaborative. We're going to do this through a couple of things. The first is we're going to take that experience that I just described for Kenya, and we're going to find a way to package it and take it to utilities everywhere in Africa. This idea of data analytics as a service, which means let's look at whatever, irrespective of the level of digitalization or digital maturity that your utility is at, that's okay. Let's get started. Let's look at the data sets you have. Let's build a database. Let's build a data management system where you can start looking at what you have and making sense of it and grow from there. That journey on data analytics, we think, is going to help. I'm sorry about my clicker. Think about digital and digitalization in far more creative ways. It's going to help us think about how do I want to improve? Maybe the software isn't giving me what I want. Maybe I need to make a couple of tweaks. You're starting to use cases as a way of shaping digital transformation. We're going to focus a lot increasingly through the collaborative on AI readiness. I have a whole segment on this, and I'll talk about this at the end. A huge focus on training. Michael, who's a moderator here, can speak to that directly. Really the importance of workforce development, and how do we make it very practical, right? How do we build programs that speak to utility leaders, that speak to managerial staff, that speak to field level staff, right? How do you really upskill them, and how do you do workforce development? And most importantly, how do you crowdsource innovation and tap into a global ecosystem of data science talent to come and work for Africa and solve for problems in water for Africa? So can we be that platform that intermediates the smartest data scientists from around the world and generate and become that channel to come in and build for Africa? That is the vision. We're going to do this. We're launching it formally here at the AfWASA Congress. We're incredibly excited about it. We're going to focus on innovation. We're going to think about product innovation and technology that serves a large number of utilities at a low cost. We're going to go open source, and we're going to tap into digital public infrastructure. This is a wholly different theme, and for those of you interested, I can talk about that. We're also going to focus on data and data readiness in the context of unlocking AI models, and I'm going to talk about just that. And I'm sure some of you in this room have already heard this phrase. If data is the new oil, AI truly is the rocket fuel that has the power to just catapult you into a whole new orbit. And I think that analogy is powerful and holds for a number of reasons. And I'll talk about some examples right there. Because just like rocket fuel is a higher quality fuel than oil, right? So if you simply take your data and you are able to annotate and label it and shape it, you suddenly unlock a whole new set of possibilities that change labor productivity, improve accuracy, and enable you to do things that I would say 3 years ago were unimaginable in some instances. There are already AI models today for listening sticks. So the models have already been built. We don't even have to do the hard work. We don't have to build the model anymore. What you need is the data. You need context-specific data that you can train the model on so the model can make sense for you. So here's an example, by the way, that's an AI-generated video right there. I wanted him to have a lot more protective gear than he does in that video, but that's as far as my AI-generated video would go. But what we want to do is to say, okay, let's just take listening sticks. A lot of utilities in Africa are already starting to use listening sticks for leak detection. JICA is supporting it. There are development banks that are seeing it as a low-cost alternative, but it's hard. The data is still not easy to bring together and generate. AI today has the power to analyze acoustic signals in real time, filter out the background, set it up, and give you all the insights you need on leaks in a way at a fraction of the cost of sensors using listening sticks, and that's the power of AI models. We can do incredible things in terms of water quality monitoring, in terms of being able to just get much higher levels of accuracy in terms of clusters or bacterial infections and report back to regulators or for the utility to use. So really, I think even the sky is not the limit anymore because we don't know what the limits are, because quantum computing is changing what that means as we speak. Every week, every month, technology is changing at an unprecedented pace. And I think we can benefit from it. And this collaborative will focus on making that happen here in Africa. We just need creativity and commitment from public sector leaders. And I think anything is possible. Thank you.
Can we give our keynote speakers another round of applause? Deepa and Kala, you have done an amazing job. You have broken this way. I think everybody feels like now, who's ready to do data science and AI? I thought there were going to be more hands, like only one. Who is ready to go for AI and data science? Still 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me do another round. Who's ready to go AI data science? Okay, it looks like we're getting there, Deepa. So let's have a 15-minute panel, and I hope I can pull this off. So I'm going to invite the two keynote speakers to please come back up for just in case you have any questions out there. But allow me to invite Dr. Duwali Kon, who is with the Gates Foundation, Water sanitation and hygiene with the Gates Foundation. Welcome, Duwali. I'll invite Professor Harsha Ratnawera, a professor of water technology in Norway. Welcome, Professor Harsha. And then our very own Dr. Frank Kizito to come to the panel. Now, I was trying to think of how I will hack this in 15 minutes. And this is what I'm going to do. So, from the keynote, a couple of things have emerged, but I'll stick to 3 things. 1, data is not an issue. We are not short of data. Not at all. 2, we are not short of the technology. So technology is not an issue. And the question is it a culture issue? Is it a leadership issue? Is it a human capital issue? And all these things, we need to put them into context. And I'll really start with Dr. Kon. And I'd like to hear your insights around what are 1 or 2 things that we can do to drive this whole digital revolution in the utilities sector? And I just want, I know we had a couple of other questions, but given time, I'm cognizant of that. So pick a few insights and then I'll have 1 or 2, 3 questions from the panel, from the audience, and we'll close this. So, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you. I want to be also conscious of time, like you said. Is it a culture issue? Probably. I think it's more what's the educational program for those who are running utilities today feel at ease in making the data available in platforms like this? So I want to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kun. Professor, what's your take on this? Digital transformation, innovation, I mean, these are buzzwords, very easy to catch around in most of these conferences. But let's break it down. What does it actually mean?
I think still there is a long way to go to have the sufficient competence and capacities in our sector.
Okay.
Right? So I think the universities and the education system has quite a lot to do there, because we are preparing the future, tomorrow's leaders, engineers, and policymakers. So we need to start there, and that's why we are involved in reformatting, improving the curricula to integrate digital tools and digital technologies.
Thank you. So Frank, before I ask you a question, I received a notification from the Revenue Authority about 3 years ago, and the Revenue Authority was asking me to file for my rental income. And I'm like, God is amazing. I am being asked to file for rental. I really wish I had rentals. So I received notification, you need to be at the authority in today at 5. I received the email at 4. I received the email at 4:30. That's a story for another day. But I finally went to URA. And so the first question they asked me was, do you have 2 water meters? I said, no. So they told me, we are using AI, GIS. And I looked at this person, I'm like, I understand what you're talking about, but let's not go there. I don't have, but then I found out that because I used my mobile number to pay for 2 water connections, that was the point. I come to you, Frank. Interoperability. DIPA is trying to build a vision for Africa, a vision for utilities that creates a platform around data sharing. But how do we start internally in terms of breaking the silos that finance and engineering and operations are reading from the same dashboard? Over to you, Frank.
Yeah, so thank you, Michael. First of all, a disclaimer. I had nothing to do with what your audio with your...
It has nothing to do with you, Frank.
So of course, as usual, as always, I am blown away by Kala's presentations. I've known him for a while now, because he brings things really to life. One of the things, as he presented, now talking about interoperability, is it struck me that there are issues that used to be reserved for particular professionals, which all of a sudden are now open to everybody, simply because we have now the technology, the AI technology, to be able to make those things readily used by non-technical people. He gave an example. Here's a recent convert of AI to AI. So I'm thinking, all the time that I've spent in the utility as an engineer working with technology and coming up with all these very interesting tools, most of these tools have been reserved for the technical departments, and really the people who should be using them, the people in commercial, in billing, in finance, for whom they are actually most beneficial, have not really adopted them, not because they don't realize the benefits, but because maybe technology is not their thing. But if we have a way to bridge that gap, the digital divide between across the professions, I think it's brilliant. And now with AI, where you can simply have a conversation with technology without necessarily being able to transform everything into bits and bytes and so on. I think that it's amazing. For me, it opens up very many opportunities. Yeah.
And I can't agree with you more, because I think Kala mentioned it. He said human language is now the new programming language. Yeah. And what that means, that if we spend more time trying to understand what we are solving for, it's no longer are you using JavaScript, Python? Somebody has already built the models, and you just need to do the plug. You just need to understand what you're solving for. Yeah. I'd like now to ask the audience 4 questions and questions, not a preamble or introduction. Questions. If I notice that you're presenting, I will move to another person. So, can I have the 4 takers? I see 1, 2, 3. So I'll go with the 3. Okay, the 4th one. Okay. I have 5 questions. Make it snappy and direct it to the person you want to. 5 questions. So keep your hands up so that they can see you. There's a lady over there, a gentleman at the back, 2 of them. Okay, guys, we have to be agile, because every minute counts. I promised Rose that I will deliver this.
Hello, good morning. I wanted to react to the question that you asked earlier. You said, who's ready to do data science? And there were not very many hands up in the air. So I'm just going to ask the panel, why do you feel that is, and what can we do to convince them?
Did you hear it? Please come again. Pardon?
Sorry, I wanted to react to the question that you asked. You said, who's ready for data science after the presentations? And there were not very many hands that went up.
Yes.
So I want to ask the panel why that is, what's their interpretation of this reticence, and what they can do about it to reassure and encourage utilities to embrace that.
Okay, so how do we get more people be willing? And it's a question to the panel. The second question, please go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Michael Luku from Zycon Consulting in the UK. The question I have for Deepa is that how would you ensure the quality of the data you are generating are fit for purpose? Because we know if you garbage in data and it's not good quality data, then you are likely to have bad results. And a study by IBM in 2022 indicated that $1.3 trillion are being lost as a result of decisions made from bad data. So how would you ensure the quality of data that you are integrating into your system are fit for purpose?
Thank you, Michael. Much appreciated. The third question, there's a gentleman right there. Yeah, there, next to you.
Bonjour, Mohamed Samba Kwaro de la Société des eaux de Guinée 5. J'ai une question pour Madame Dipa. Donc, parlant de l'intégration des jeux de données au niveau des modèles d'intelligence artificielle, pouvez-vous nous décrire brièvement, parce que le temps manque, les meilleures stratégies d'intégration des données, les stratégies? Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Yes, please go, and then we'll have the final question here, right here.
Good morning, Desigan Naidu. My question is about risk. I mean, part of the problem with the AI is limited verification. The second problem with the AI is it might give people who don't know enough a bit of a false sense of confidence about very big decisions, very pivotal decisions. And the third issue is that AI is becoming weaponized in the world, and it represents a real risk to the sector. Be interested in what the panel thinks.
The final question here, right here. The lady over here.
My name is Naama Sharif. I'm coming from Brentwood, Germany. My question is, sometimes we win some tender or projects to build wastewater treatment plants in development countries, and we found sometimes that the treatment level we have to do is better than the river where the treated wastewater discharge is. So sometimes we clean the wastewater to very good level to discharge it in very dirty river. So we are industrial sector, we cannot wait to advise the local customer, but because we are making money. But what do you think this related to bad management or what the kind of local issue is?
Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. Pick a question, respond to it, and you're parting short. So that's how we're going to run it. So I'll start from Deepa all the way to Frank. You had, I think, 2 questions, Deepa.
Yeah. Okay, I just need 45 minutes. And I'll talk about it. Okay, I think the first one's really, Emily, thank you for that. I think words like data science is scary, right, for a lot of people, right? Because when you say it's like math or computer science, and utilities, I think it's not the comfort zone, right? It's really just about, it's going to be a journey of learning by doing, and I think that's going to happen when you start working with these models, and you're starting to see how incredible this revolution is in terms of democratizing it beyond data scientists. So you don't have to be comfortable with data anymore to work with data. And I think, and you are never going to, and that is an experience. It's not something we can talk about, it's not something you just even can teach. I think it's a bit of a learning by doing, and I think that's going to be one of the things in the collaborative. We want to give utilities the experience of being able to work with that. Yeah. So I feel like that's my, on data quality, I would say, we're not even starting with any assessment. We're not making any judgment. We're like, give me what you have. We're going to look at the data you have, but you don't even know what quality data you have unless you've analyzed it. When we did this, for example, in Kenya, we realized that there were massive gaps in data quality, right? Like 2 different reports, and there were interoperability issues, but there were also very fundamental gaps in just how we were collecting data and the quality of the data that we were collecting. And we could show that the higher granularity data was relatively more reliable than the low frequency annual estimates that they were making. And we wouldn't have been able to even come to that point if we weren't analyzing the data in the first place. So in the beginning, we're saying that's okay. Let's assume all of this is bad even. But let's get started, right? And let's look at what you have. Let's look at, and then it'll tell us a lot about the quality, and then you start thinking about how to improve quality over time. Great question on AI and how to be data ready for AI. It's actually not very complicated. It's just so you have data that comes in the form of image, text, or numbers. I'm going to keep it simple. And then you're simply labeling data in a way where the model understands it. So depending on what the use case is for the AI model, what you're starting to do is you're sort of creating data pipelines. So you're saying, okay, I need to collect data on customers, and that data is going to come from this operational workflow, which is a business workflow that the utility have, and you're taking the data that already exists on your software, but you're just labeling it so that it can speak to the AI model better. So it's not rocket science, even though I use the rocket analogy. There are very simple things that you can do, and there are ways we can support that. Risk. I'm happy to talk about that, but I'm also happy to let the other panelists take on that.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
So
I'm requesting for an extra 5 minutes, so I'm not a dictator. So Rose, another 5 minutes, then I'll be out of here.
I'll just be very brief about risk. I mean, Dessa going to raise that issue. I mean, we're using generative AI to only interrogate information that we've given it. And we limit its search, right, to the information that we're giving it. So it doesn't hallucinate. It doesn't go into the web and start searching for stuff. And what it's enabling us to do is to do the things that we wished we could do ourselves, but we just don't have the time. And I see that in IWA. We would like to curate a really good summary of all the top papers on anaerobic digestion, but it takes a lot of time. And we found that if we feed the AI with our own publications that we know have been peer-reviewed and they're good, and we ask it to find the key findings from this, it does a pretty good job. And I was recently in Malaysia, and I saw that in the Philippines and in the PUB in Singapore, they had all of this historical data that no one had ever touched. And they got someone to just place it into a generative AI. And then they said, can you interrogate this? And like Deepa said, they found inconsistencies between certain types of consultants that they employed. They found inconsistencies in contractors that they were using in terms of the performance of certain pipes which were laid by different people. Things that they just never would have had the time to do, they can do. So I think it empowers people, you know?
Yes, Doctor.
Thank you. So briefly on quality of data, I think AfWASA has the power to work with regulator and really put some great standard in place. So the type of data you want, what type of standard you want to put in place so that the data come in, it's very robust, it's very consistent. And that's a powerful organization. I believe that's something you should be doing. Hiring young talent. This is a network with young professionals, and we're talking about, you know, why utility don't have the data or why you don't have enough data scientists. These people are out there, and investing in building those capabilities in universities is going to accelerate the availability of experts and engineers in these areas. Thank you.
Yes, Prof, over to you.
Yes, when it comes to the quality of data, and we know that none of the sensors are working 24/7, 365 days, right? But there are ways to validate the data, and sometimes you can even estimate some data. So we are using these type of systems in our hybrid sensor systems, which is a combination of historical data and real-time data. So I think this is one way of looking at or dealing with that. When it comes to the risks, it's not only the AI-related risk, but we should also not forget about the cyber security. There's a downside of all the positive things that we are talking about, the digital transformation. So our biggest challenge is the lack of awareness and lack of preparedness. So this is something we have to do, we have to work with, starting from the undergraduate studies, but also spreading to the utilities. Thanks.
Thank you, Prof, and I'm glad you talk about cybersecurity. But over to you, Frank.
Yes, so Mike, I'd like to make a quick comment in response to the lady who asked about your earlier question. And I think the problem was that was in the way that you asked the question, because you specifically asked us how many of us are ready to adopt AI and data science. But when I look around the room, I see people who are wired, I see people who are engrossed in their smartphones, I see people who are connected in every way. And so whether we recognize it or not, actually we're all already adopters of AI, we're all already data scientists. And so I think the future is exciting in that respect.
So Frank, you're saying the future is here, it's just that we haven't seen it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so if this was a church, I would have said something else, but this is what... Can we give a round of applause to our panel? I am looking forward to a collaboration. One of the things that I do for a living, I train people who are not interested in long-term training. So we run a software academy, and part of the stuff that we do is data science, AI, and we have conversations with Deepa going on, so watch out, we'll be hitting your mails soon. But here's an announcement for me to make, and then I'll invite Rose for housekeeping. That to all CEOs of the water and sanitation utilities, come to the CEO Forum in Royal Palm Hall at 10:30 a.m., whether you've received an invitation or not. Thank you very much. It's been Mike Tejeka who is leading this conversation, and over to you, Rose. And to the panel, give them another round of applause as we take your seats. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have a photographic moment? But before you leave, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. I would like to start by thanking you for coming for that panel discussion, but to remind you that tomorrow we have a plenary also starting at 9. We are trying our best to keep time. The parallel sessions start today. We have 11 parallel sessions, and they start at 10:30. And that will take you up to lunch, which is at 12. The afternoon session will resume at 1:30 with a 30-minute break at 3, and then you go back to the last session that starts at 3:30. Would like to ask all those who signed up to be chairs to make sure you're at your room 15 minutes before time, together with all those who are presenting. Because if you show up when the session has started and you start trying to interrupt the technical people to load your presentation, that won't be nice. Would like to keep time as much as possible, and now you can notice we've already lost 8 minutes. Very exciting is our operational challenge. We want to thank our sponsors for that. It's happening in the tent behind. We have groups competing. Please find time to go. They're there the whole of today and whole of tomorrow, and at the gala dinner we shall announce the winner. There are also some crafts for you to buy down there. Check the app for the program. There are side events in the evening. Some are by invitation only, others are open events. Please check the app. We have books for CEOs from Africa. CEOs from Africa, show of hands. They are not here? They are not here. Very disappointing. A few. You know, CEOs don't like putting up their hands, so maybe I've put them on the spot. Please go right now to the Iowa stall to pick up a gift from Iowa Publishing for your companies. So, and you receive them from Professor Kala. He's there just for about 30 minutes or so. He wants to hand them over personally. If you want to shake his hand, you go. Otherwise, tomorrow, you'll be left with me. I would like to recognize our worship, the Mayor of Central Division, Mr. Uhuru. You're most welcome, and we would like to thank you for coming. We have 2 forums happening now. Mayor's Forum in Shina Hall, which is on the west side, by invitation only. The CEO Forum is for CEOs. We'll see how many CEOs we can have in the room, and then we'll see if we can take on others. There are some others in the category of invited guests. So you have 20 minutes to have break and be at your session halls. Signage is on the app. The ushers are around in case you need any assistance. Thank you very much, Michael. A big round for our panelists. Thank you.